Have you ever noticed how heavy a small, silent object can become? What if the thing you are desperately trying to hold on to is not preserving the love you lost, but actually trapping your grief? There is a strange kind of burden we carry in the quiet corners of our homes. A faded photograph, a watch that no longer ticks, an old shirt that has finally lost its scent, a simple, everyday item that anyone else would pass by without a second glance. But to you, it is not just an object. It feels like an anchor. It feels like the very last physical thread connecting you to a time, a place, or a person that is no longer here. We hold on to these things with a quiet, desperate grip. We put them on shelves, we hide them in drawers, we carry them in our pockets. And we tell ourselves that as long as we have this object, the connection is not truly broken. As long as this thing remains, the person or the past is not entirely gone. We project all our love, all our longing, and all our unspoken words into a lifeless vessel. But here is the truth few people want to face. Most of your suffering is not caused by the fact that things have changed. It is caused by how tightly you are demanding that they remain, exactly as they were. If you have ever felt stuck in the past, exhausted by your own grief, or terrified that moving on means you are forgetting someone you loved, this is for you. Stay until the end, because the final lesson may change the way you see this pain forever. In Buddhist wisdom, there is a deep understanding of human attachment. Buddhism reminds us that our deepest suffering rarely comes from life's natural changes. It comes from our fierce resistance to those changes. We want the world to freeze. We want time to stop. And when the universe inevitably moves forward, we try to build a dam against the river of time, using the fragile objects left behind. Imagine a person standing by the ocean. They dip a small glass into the waves, fill it to the brim, and carefully walk away. For years, they guard this little glass. They protect it from the sun, they shield it from the wind, and they tell themselves, "This is the ocean. As long as I have this glass, I have the sea." But the water in the glass grows stagnant. It loses its motion, its life, its vastness. The person is so focused on protecting the glass that they forget they can simply walk back to the shore and experience the ocean itself. The object you are keeping is that glass of water. It is not the love. It is not the person. It is simply a fragment of a memory, frozen in time. Think about your own life. What are you still holding on to? When you look at that object, what do you actually feel? Does it bring you a deep, abiding peace? Or does it instantly pull you backward, anchoring you to a moment you cannot return to? Does it quietly feed an endless sorrow? We cling to these items because we confuse the vessel with the essence. We are terrified that if we let go of the physical reminder, the love itself will evaporate. We think that healing means forgetting. We believe that finding peace is somehow a betrayal of the tears we cried. Stop, breathe, let that sink in. You are not powerless. You do not have to carry a museum of grief just to prove that your love was real. Because holding on does not keep the past alive. It only keeps you from living in the present. But understanding this is only the first step. The mind will always try to convince you that the object is sacred and that letting go is dangerous. And this is where the next truth begins. What if the object you are guarding so fiercely has no power of its own? Here is the truth few people want to face. The physical things we hoard do not possess memories. They do not hold love. They do not contain the spirit of the people we miss. They are simply cloth, metal, paper, and glass. The magic you feel when you hold that item does not come from the item itself. It comes entirely from you. We often trap ourselves in the illusion of the object. We look at a faded ticket stub, a handwritten note, or a piece of jewelry, and we feel a sudden rush of warmth, followed instantly by a wave of sharp sorrow. We replay old conversations in our heads. We worry about what the future will look like if this item is ever lost or destroyed. We panic at the thought of misplacing it, as if losing a watch or a sweater means losing the person all over again. We cling to these physical tethers because we are afraid of floating away into the empty space of our own lives. Buddhist wisdom teaches us to look closely at this illusion. In Buddhist thought, there is a profound understanding of emptiness. This does not mean that the world is hollow or meaningless. It means that things do not possess inherent emotional weight. An object is just an object. It is our mind that paints it with sorrow. It is our mind that weaves the story around it. When we understand this, we begin to see that we are not actually attached to the thing itself. We are attached to the feeling we experience when we look at it. Imagine a quiet lake on a clear night, perfectly reflecting the bright silver moon. If you want to keep the moon forever, you might try to capture the water. You might scoop it up into a jar and take it home, believing you have captured the light. But when you look inside the jar in the quiet of your room, the water is dark. The moon was never in the water. The water was only a mirror, reflecting the vast light from above. The object you keep is exactly like that jar of water. It only reflects the love that already exists inside of your own heart. When you touch that old piece of clothing, or look at that faded photograph, the love you feel is not radiating out from the object. It is radiating out from you. You are the source of the light. You have always been the source. Think about your own life. Think about the things you are afraid to pack away or let go of. Ask yourself, what are you actually holding on to? Are you holding on to the reality of the present moment? Or are you holding on to an echo? What are you afraid will happen if you gently place that object in a box, close the lid, and walk away? Pause, breathe, observe the thought without following it down the spiral of grief. Look at the object without the heavy story you have attached to it. See it for what it is. A piece of fabric, a fragile piece of glass, a silent stone. Let the feeling of love rise within you, but recognize that the object is not creating it. You do not need a physical anchor to prove that your history was real. When you finally realize that the love is in you and not in the thing, the object loses its suffocating weight. It becomes just a thing again. But recognizing this illusion is only part of the journey, because even when we know the object is just an object, a deeper, darker worry often takes over in the quiet hours of the night. We begin to feel that stepping forward is somehow wrong, and this is where the next truth begins, because beneath this heavy attachment is a quiet fear waiting to be understood. Section 3. The fear that healing is a betrayal. What if your refusal to heal is not a badge of loyalty, but a cage of your own making? Here is the truth few people want to face. We often believe that our pain is the only proof that we loved at all. When we suffer a loss, we naturally cling to the physical reminders. We leave the object exactly where they left it. We keep the faded shirt in the closet. We refuse to delete the old messages. But as time passes, a subtle shift happens. When we catch ourselves smiling at a joke or enjoying a quiet morning, a sudden wave of guilt crashes over us. We pull the object close again to remind ourselves of the ache. We convince ourselves that if we let go of the pain, if we pack away the item, we are leaving the past behind. We think that moving forward means we did not care enough. We use our ongoing grief as a monument, terrified that if we stop mourning, we will start forgetting. Buddhist wisdom teaches us a profound lesson about the difference between love and suffering. We so often confuse the two. In Buddhist thought, pure love is a liberating, expansive energy. Suffering, on the other hand, is born from attachment and resistance. One of the deepest lessons of Buddhism is that clinging to your own pain does not honor what you lost. The universe does not require your misery as a tribute. Love is not measured by how much you suffer in its absence. Imagine a person standing in a beautiful sunlit garden, gripping a sharp, dried thorn in the palm of their hand. The thorn is the last piece of a rose that withered long ago. As the person squeezes it, the thorn cuts deep into their skin. They bleed and they ache, but they refuse to open their hand. They tell themselves, "As long as I feel this sharp pain, I am keeping the memory of the rose alive." They ignore the sunlight. They ignore the fresh air. They simply stand in the beautiful garden, squeezing the thorn harder, terrified that if they drop it, the rose will be gone forever. The object you are keeping out of guilt is that sharp thorn. This is what we do when we refuse to step forward. We think that holding on to the heavy, heartbreaking reminders is a noble sacrifice. We feel guilty for having a good day. We feel wrong for wanting to declutter our physical space. We look at a box of old belongings and feel a crushing pressure to keep it all, confusing the preservation of things with the preservation of love. Think about your own life. Ask yourself, does the past truly want you to be trapped in a state of endless sorrow? Does gripping that old object make the love stronger, or does it only keep you bleeding? What are you afraid will happen if you finally let the wound close? Stop, breathe. Let the feeling rise without making it your identity. Give yourself permission to lay the thorn down. You can love deeply without hurting continuously. You do not need to carry the heavy weight of an object to prove that your history mattered. Your healing is not a betrayal. Your peace is not an erasure of the past. You can let go of the pain while keeping the love entirely intact. But to finally set the object down without fear, we must understand the very nature of everything around us. And this is where the next truth begins. 4. The truth of impermanence. What if the very nature of life is to slip through our fingers, and our exhaustion comes entirely from refusing to open our hands? Here is the truth few people want to face. We spend our lives fighting an unwinnable war against time. When we experience profound love, deep comfort, or a perfect moment, our first instinct is to freeze it. We take a picture, we keep a ticket, we hold on to a sweater. We look at the physical world and demand that it stops changing. We try to control the natural fading of things. We look at a room left exactly as it was years ago, or a dusty box of belongings in the attic, and we believe we are holding back the hands of the clock. We exhaust ourselves trying to make the temporary permanent. Buddhism reminds us of a beautiful yet difficult reality: impermanence. One of the deepest lessons of Buddhism is that absolutely nothing in the physical world stays the same. The earth shifts, the seasons turn, and physical forms break down. This is not a punishment from the universe. It is simply the rhythm of existence. Attachment causes suffering not because love is wrong, but because we are trying to attach ourselves to smoke. We are demanding that a world of constant motion stands entirely still. Imagine a wide, powerful river flowing steadily toward the ocean. A person stands on the riverbank, captivated by the beautiful, swirling patterns of the water. They want to keep that exact pattern forever. So, they build a thick stone wall right in the middle of the river, trapping the water in a small pool. For a short time, they feel they have captured the water. But very soon, without the flow of the river, the trapped water becomes dark, stagnant, and heavy. The beauty of the river was never in a single drop of water. The beauty was in the flow. The beauty was in the motion. By trying to stop the river, they destroyed the very thing they found beautiful. The object you are holding onto is that stone wall. We do this in our modern lives every day. We build walls out of old possessions. We cling to items from past relationships, childhood homes, or loved ones who have passed on, using these physical things as barriers against the terrifying flow of time. We sit in rooms filled with stagnant memories, wondering why we feel so heavy, so anxious, and so completely unable to move forward. Think about your own life. Look at the physical things you are guarding so fiercely. Ask yourself, are you trying to stop the river? Are you fighting a quiet, exhausting battle against the reality that everything changes? Is this object bringing you true peace, or is it just a heavy stone holding you back from the ocean of the present moment? Stop, breathe, observe the reality of change without resisting it. You do not need to fight the flow of time. You do not have to hold the world together with your bare hands. Let the natural fading of physical things happen. Do your part in the present, then release your grip on the past. Because peace is not found by stopping the river. It is found by allowing yourself to float with it. But if everything physical eventually fades, we are left terrified. We wonder, if the object disappears, where does the love actually go? And this is where the next truth begins. 5. Love does not live in things. What if the love you are so terrified of losing was never actually inside the object to begin with? Here is the truth few people want to face. We assign impossible tasks to ordinary items. We look at a watch, a favorite coffee mug, or a handwritten letter, and we make it the ultimate caretaker of our deepest feelings. We believe that if the letter tears, or if the mug shatters on the floor, the affection it represented shatters right along with it. We feel a sudden, breathless panic when an item is misplaced. We frantically search our homes as if we have not just lost a piece of jewelry, but a piece of our own soul. We tie our most profound, enduring emotions to fragile, temporary things that can rust, break, or fade. Buddhist wisdom teaches us to look closely at the true nature of what is real. In Buddhist thought, the physical world is entirely temporary, but the essence of our interconnectedness, the compassion, the lessons, and the love we share is boundless. It is formless. Buddhism reminds us that love is not a solid object. It cannot be contained in a drawer. It cannot be folded up and put on a shelf. When we try to trap a formless, expansive energy inside a physical boundary, we create suffering. Imagine a bright, warm fire burning in a quiet room on a freezing winter night. The heat fills the space, bringing comfort and light. You want to carry that exact warmth with you forever. So, you grab a heavy wooden box, scoop up a burning coal, and close the lid tightly to keep it safe. But inside the closed box, deprived of air and space, the coal slowly suffocates. It turns into cold, lifeless ash. The warmth of the fire was never meant to be locked in a box. It was meant to be felt. It was meant to radiate. It belonged to the open room, not the wooden trap. The object you are so afraid to lose is that closed box. This is what happens when we hoard items out of fear. We stuff our closets full of old clothes. We fill our shelves with tokens from past lives, and we shrink our massive, beautiful love down into a tiny, fragile box of ashes. We mistake the cold ash for the roaring fire. We think we are preserving a legacy, but really, we are just maintaining a silent storage unit. We weigh down our present lives with the heavy artifacts of yesterday. Think about your own life. When you look at that cherished item, ask yourself, is the love really woven into the fabric, or is it woven into you? Does the memory vanish if the physical item disappears? What if the love is completely safe, even if the object is gone? Stop, breathe, hold the object in your hands, or simply picture it in your mind. Feel its weight, notice its texture, realize that it is entirely separate from the warmth in your heart. Let the love exist completely independently of this silent thing. You do not need to guard a physical monument to prove that your love was real. Love lives in the way you speak, the way you forgive, and the way you carry yourself through the world. It is woven into the very fabric of who you have become, because love survives the fading of all things. But holding on too tightly to the physical world creates a very specific kind of pain. We exhaust ourselves by acting as permanent security guards for our own memories, And this is where the next truth begins. 6. The suffering of holding too tightly. What if the desperate grip you are using to protect your most precious memories is the very thing causing your daily exhaustion? Here is the truth few people want to face. The tighter you hold on to anything in this world, the more you suffer. When we fear losing the last physical trace of someone or something we loved, our natural instinct is to lock it away. We clutch the object in our hands, or we hide it in a safe place, constantly guarding it against the natural wear and tear of time. We check to make sure the old jacket is still hanging in the exact same spot. We worry if the photograph is fading in the sunlight. We walk through our own homes feeling like curators of a silent museum. We do not realize that the immense effort it takes to keep the past frozen is draining all the energy we have for the present. In Buddhist thought, there is a fundamental teaching about the nature of clinging. Buddhism reminds us that attachment itself is not simply a feeling, it is an action. It is the active, white-knuckled gripping of something that is meant to be free. The suffering we experience does not come from the object, nor does it come from the love. The suffering comes entirely from the tension in our grip. When we refuse to accept that things change, we put ourselves at war with reality. And fighting reality is an incredibly exhausting way to live. Imagine picking up a handful of dry, golden sand from a beautiful beach. If you hold your hand perfectly open, flat and relaxed, the sand rests there peacefully. It stays with you, catching the sunlight. But if you suddenly become terrified that the wind might blow a single grain away, you will instinctively close your hand. You will clench your fist as tight as you possibly can. What happens? The harder you squeeze, the more the sand is forced out through the cracks between your fingers. It slips away faster than before. And worse, your hand begins to cramp, your arm shakes. You are left with aching muscles, an empty fist, and a profound sense of loss. The object you are obsessively guarding is that handful of sand. This is what we do when we refuse to let go of our fierce attachment. We squeeze the life out of our own memories. We turn beautiful reminders into sources of deep anxiety. We worry about losing a ring, damaging a letter, or misplacing a token. And in doing so, we let the fear of loss completely overshadow the joy of having loved. We cramp our own hearts with the effort of holding on. Think about your own life. Think about the tension you carry in your chest when you look at that heavy object. Ask yourself, how tight is your grip right now? Are you holding your memories gently, or are you squeezing them out of fear? Is this fierce protection actually preserving the love, or is it just making you tired? Stop, breathe. Notice the imaginary tension in your hands. You can stop squeezing now. You can stop forcing the world to stand still. Let the muscles of your heart finally relax. You do not have to fiercely protect a fragile object to keep your past valid. Let the tension pass. Allow the memory to rest lightly in the open palm of your mind, without the desperate need to lock it inside a physical thing, because true peace does not come from securing everything in a locked grip. It comes from releasing the tension. But what does it actually mean to open your hand? And this is where the next truth begins. 7. The metaphor of the open hand. What if letting go does not mean throwing something away, but simply changing the way you hold it? Here is the truth few people want to face. We mistakenly believe that letting go is an act of violent separation. We think that to heal, we must completely erase our history. We feel as though moving on requires us to take the things we cherished, the old photographs, the inherited watch, the quiet reminders, and throw them out into the cold. We associate detachment with abandonment. And because we could never abandon someone we loved, we refuse to detach. We look at that silent object in our room and convince ourselves that as long as we hold onto it with an iron grip, we are protecting a sacred bond. We treat letting go as if it means walking away and slamming the door forever. Buddhist wisdom offers a much gentler, far more beautiful path. In Buddhist thought, non-attachment is not coldness, it is not forgetting, it is not erasing the past or pretending the pain never happened. Non-attachment is simply the practice of loving something without trying to own it. It is the quiet art of holding the world lightly. Buddhism reminds us that our hands were not designed to be locked in a permanent, trembling fist. True connection does not require a chain. Imagine a small, beautiful bird that has just landed on the center of your open palm. It is delicate, fragile, and full of life. If you want the bird to stay with you forever, your fear will instantly tell you to close your fingers. You will want to build a cage. You will want to lock your hand around it to keep it from flying away. But the moment you close your fist, you do not preserve the bird. You crush it. The only way to truly experience the beauty of the bird is to keep your hand entirely open. You let it rest there. It stays. And when the season changes and it finally flies away, you let it go, grateful for the quiet moment it rested with you. The object you are holding onto is that bird. In our modern lives, we try to put our memories in cages. We stare at a piece of jewelry, a faded shirt, or an old room, demanding that the grief stays fresh just to prove our loyalty. We refuse to let the natural cycle of life continue. We lock away our own hearts, thinking we are protecting a memory, when in reality, we are only trapping ourselves in an empty cage. Think about your own life. When you think about letting go of that physical object, or the heavy grief attached to it, what are you actually visualizing? Ask yourself, are you terrified of losing the memory entirely, or are you just terrified of opening your hand? Is it possible to let the memory stay without building a cage of suffering around it? Stop. Breathe. Open your hands right now, wherever you are. Sit for a moment with empty, relaxed palms. Let the physical sensation of an open hand travel all the way to your mind. You do not have to throw your memories away. You just have to stop gripping them so tightly. Let the object be an object. Let the love simply be love. Allow the past to rest lightly in your open palm without the desperate need to lock your fingers around it. Because peace is not the absence of the things you loved. It is the spaciousness of an open heart. But once the hand is open, we are faced with the empty space left behind. How do we move forward without feeling that we are leaving a piece of our soul behind? And this is where the next truth begins. 8. Moving forward as an act of honor. What if moving forward is not an act of forgetting, but the highest form of honoring what you lost? Here is the truth few people want to face. We mistakenly believe that stillness equals respect. We look at an old room, a dusty box of belongings, or a faded piece of clothing, and we think that keeping it perfectly preserved is the ultimate tribute. We put our own lives on pause. We deny ourselves new joy. We refuse to laugh fully, and we step quietly around our own futures, worried that any forward momentum is a sign of disrespect. We treat our ongoing sorrow as a physical monument, quietly assuming that if we rebuild our lives, we are somehow diminishing the love we once had. Buddhist wisdom teaches an entirely different path. In Buddhist thought, life is an endless continuum of presence and mindful action. To honor the past is not to become a statue, but to carry the lessons of that past into the living, breathing present. Buddhism reminds us that the greatest tribute we can pay to a profound connection is not to suffer endlessly in its absence. The greatest tribute is to live fully because of its existence. We do not honor life by clinging to death or ending. Imagine a massive, ancient tree standing through a storm in a quiet forest. If you were to look deep inside the trunk of that tree, you would see dozens of rings. Each ring represents a chapter of its life, years of harsh winters, heavy rains, and bright, beautiful summers. The tree does not stop growing just to honor a harsh winter from a decade ago. It does not refuse to bloom to prove that it remembers the rain. Instead, it absorbs its history. It carries the rings entirely inside itself, using the strength of the past to push new leaves toward the open sky. The tree honors its history by continuing to grow. The object you are holding onto is just an old leaf, but you are the tree. In our modern lives, we feel a sudden stab of guilt when we finally decide to pack away an old shirt, clear off a crowded shelf, or simply have a day where we do not feel crushed by sadness. We think that by removing the physical reminder, we are cutting out our own history. But stepping forward, finding joy in a quiet morning, or finally letting go of an object, is not an act of erasure. You are simply growing the next ring. You are taking the love, the compassion, and the warmth you received and using them to fuel your life today. Think about your own life. Ask yourself, would the person or the love you are grieving truly want you to stop living? Are you honoring the past by remaining frozen in a state of exhaustion, or are you just punishing yourself? What if the best way to prove that the love mattered is to let it make you a softer, wiser, and more present human being? Stop, breathe, feel the quiet strength in your own body. You are allowed to take a step forward. You do not need to carry a heavy physical anchor to prove you remember. Do your part in the present, then release the guilt of healing. Let your ongoing life be the monument. Let your growth be the tribute. Let the past rest inside you without needing a physical object to keep it anchored to the earth. Because true honoring does not happen in a dusty box. It happens in the way you choose to live today. But to fully step into this freedom, we must make one final realization about the space we are leaving behind. And this is where the final truth begins. 9. Making space for peace. What if the empty space you have been so terrified of is not a void, but the very beginning of your peace? We began this journey by looking at that small, silent object you have been quietly guarding. The watch that no longer ticks, the faded shirt, the everyday item you turned into a heavy anchor. We hold on because we fear that if we finally let these things go, we will be left completely empty. We equate emptiness with abandonment. We look at an empty shelf, an empty drawer, or a cleared room and feel a sudden panic, assuming that the love has been swept away with the dust. But Buddhist wisdom asks us to completely change the way we see empty space. In Buddhist thought, emptiness is not a tragedy, it is not an erasure, it is the ultimate state of possibility. True peace requires spaciousness. You cannot welcome the fresh air of the present moment if every single corner of your heart and your physical environment is tightly packed with the artifacts of yesterday. Removing the object is not an act of destruction, it is an act of clearing the path. Imagine a beautiful, quiet room. Over many years, you have filled it with heavy, ornate boxes. Each box holds a cherished memory. You love these boxes, so you keep bringing more inside. Eventually, the room becomes so crowded that the door can barely open. You can no longer walk through it. The curtains are firmly drawn to protect the boxes from the sun, and the air grows heavy and stale. You are surviving in the room, but you are not living in it. One day, you find the courage to gently carry those heavy boxes out. You open the windows wide. The room is suddenly completely bare, but it is not a sad, lonely emptiness. The golden sunlight pours in across the floorboards. The fresh wind sweeps through, lifting the stagnant dust. For the first time in years, you can breathe deeply. You can sit in the center of the room and simply exist. The space in your life is exactly like that room. When you finally decide to pack away the physical anchors of your grief, you are not throwing away your history. You are opening the windows of your present life. You are giving your heart the room it needs to beat properly again. You will find that the love did not leave when the object left. The love is the sunlight. It is the fresh air. It is formless, and it fills the new space effortlessly. Think about your own life as it is today. Think about the person you are slowly becoming. Ask yourself, what new piece is waiting to enter your life, but cannot find a way in because your hands are still full? What if setting the object down is exactly what the past would want for you? Stop, breathe. Look at the object one last time. You do not need to force yourself to feel nothing. Let the tears fall if they need to, but you no longer have to carry this heavy weight. Whisper a quiet thank you to the object. Thank it for holding your heavy heart when you were too tired to carry it yourself. Then, gently, put it away. Let the pure love remain, but let the heavy vessel go. Trust your own heart to remember what truly matters. Trust that you are strong enough to step into the open space of your life. If these lessons touched your heart, share this video with someone who may need a little more peace today. You can let go now.